Can they hear us? You can. JP, welcome. I introduced you, not sure if you've heard us. With a brief introduction of who everybody is, we will turn it over to you into the PowerPoint that we've been working on to share with folks. Calvin, how are you doing? There's
Thanks.
from Canada. That's why it looks probably a little bit lighter there, like in the day right now. But it's probably a little bit earlier. So, having said that, JP, the floor is yours. You want to start the PowerPoint? I'll do the first few slides, and then we'll turn it over to everybody. JP, you're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, you want me to dive right into that PowerPoint from today, or did you have some other preliminary slides, or just go right into it?
I want to go right into it. I want to go into the first few slides that we talked about as to how did we get here, okay? And how did we get here, set the scene, and then kind of go from there. All right, and I'll kind of pause in between. So first, I want to show just something glaring that goes. What we're talking about tonight is break even. Although this group has talked a lot about capital improvement and different things we want to see done, last time we met, everybody in this group, for the most part, Mr. Ron, anyone here, agreed to some of the water improvements in our water law. We wanted to address that. And that was primarily, remember, we talked about zones 1 through 3 and 4 through 6. The consensus was that that's where we identify the majority of our water loss to be in our 2-inch water lines. We want to address those first in order of priority. Just based on the fact that we feel that those, according to the water loss study that done back in 2014 and 2016, might be where we're losing the most water. If I speak out of turn on these things, guys, those are the nice. Please stop me. Next slide, please. So I want everybody to understand that this is what our water costs. I think it's very important for understanding what water costs us. Everything in the lighter shade of blue is our operating expense. This is what it costs us to provide water without us providing a single drop. Okay, that is the very first thing that everybody will see. Everything in the darker shade of blue is what it costs us to buy the actual physical water that everybody consumes. Okay. Understand. Notice the number is increasing because as usage goes up, and as obviously the price of water goes up, we anticipate it's going to continue to rise. Next slide, please. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, look, you go back a slide. I'm sorry.
In the operating, the light blue, that does not include any water pump.
Correct. The dark blue is the addition of the actual purchased water. That's what we are purchasing and paying for water.
So what's the actual number between those two?
So if you add those two together, the 5 million on the left, we're just a shade below 5 million right now. And the next year will be slightly above 5 million. Yes, ma'am.
Operating expenses, does that include people's salaries?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That includes salary, fringe benefits, the vehicles, got everything we need
Okay.
to operate the department except for the actual water. All right, so everybody kind of understands. All right.
There's no, does that include emergency repairs? Any amount for that?
Not anything.
Nothing on the maintenance side.
Maintenance side except for the bare minimum. So, so
It includes everything.
but it includes not capital improvements.
No, so capital improvements is elected. If we decide to do, when we talk about capital improvement, talking about replacing existing infrastructure, right? It may be a bad pipeline, but once we take the decision to replace that pipeline, it becomes a capital improvement. I've mentioned the council and Mr. Garcia, right now, we are replacing pipeline at 1 foot per increment. Every time we go out and do a repair, we put a 12-inch repair bin on that pipe. We can do that all day long, but it's very expensive. Ultimately, you replace the pipe. So the operating expense, the light blue, is standard, including bringing contractors in to do repairs that is over our capabilities at the time. We've had breaks on the I-45 project. All night repairs, those are expensive repairs, we've got repairs that cost $30,000. So all that included in that.
So that doesn't include, like,
Thank you for correcting.
Yeah,
let's just call that ongoing maintenance that comes up.
it's only, it's
Normal wear and tear.
very only, right, and I ran one of the things we were talking about, and I ran this math here real quick here, because it came to me. That operating cost, that light blue is about $35 per tank. Per month. $3 million a year at 7,100 meters. Just math. It's $35, and that's not delivering any water to anyone. That's just maintaining, the system, not buying a drop of water. It's $35 per tank.
We have another question.
So in this, what is it, 5 million? Does that include, I know you mentioned, like the contractors in the I-45, or does that include like when they break a line, is that coming out of this money? Or does the contractor pay for it? Like,
The contractor should not be paying for that for 5.5%. Because we had to check, that's a deep story, but we have not, been able to recoup money from the grant.
are we gonna recoup our money?
We're working on the best ways to recoup it.
We're working to do better.
So basically, to answer that question, it's very delicate because the work has to be done, the lines have to be replaced, and a lot of those, for example, if I'm driving an old dilapidated car that's on its last leg, still driving, still, but it's holding on by a thread. And then somebody breaks it, right? The repair might be great for me to drive it and go to and from, but the value of that vehicle may be lower. And that's kind of where we stand right now. So that's where the thin line stands right now. That's where we're kind of going back and forth, finding out the best way to improve those funds. And we are working amicably with Tech Stop on a way to do that, but it's almost easier to see it all the way through first and then find out what that is. So whether it comes with direct reimbursement or through other forms, that's what we're still trying to figure out.
Makes
Now,
sense.
One thing I can promise you will be paid more than whole. On that, I think so far, I think we're ahead of that.
Makes sense.
My only comment on that scenario, that methodology you're using, that's not what Lee City and Dickinson did with regard to TxDOT and any problems on water breakage. TxDOT actually reimbursed those cities. So I want you to.
I think,
But I'm tired, and I'm going to be very frank, I've said that. I'm tired of Lamar being treated as a second-class city. I'm tired of that.
that's fair, and we appreciate that, and we'll look into that. So if we can move on to the next slide. I think we may know that. This is what everybody wants to know. How much money does the water side owe? I'll tell you, based on most cities wish this was their debt today. This is absolutely wonderful. It shows that right now, next year, we owe probably closer to 350. And then after that, if you take a very steep drop to under $50,000 per year, and it tails off heading into 2029. So the way it's going is really, really, really great. We're headed in the right direction. However, there's a pro and a con. Right? It also shows that there isn't any debt on the book. It's always good to be out of there, but when you work in capital improvement and dealing with that, also means that you're probably falling behind a little bit on what you do. So I guess we can go on to the next slide, and then I'm almost done, and I'll turn it over to everybody. So basically, when you add the debt into it for the next couple of years, there's a whole lot. It looks like we need roughly over $5 million in 2023 in order to break even. Again, this is not a single capital improvement project. The question everybody keeps asking, how much do we need? Well, this is how much we need. This is the answer to that question. We need $5 million. Okay. So the question that you have asked is, okay, what happens if we table this, if we don't raise water? All of these are options. All of these are options. Whatever these are all options. I'll probably tell you that I and a lot of folks here will probably not have a job if we do that, and I'll have the next slide show you what that means. Go to the next slide. This is what happens if we do nothing. Okay? Right now, next year, we are $2.5 million in the hole. Already. Okay? This has been an ongoing thing that we have not handled for years. Notice, as the years progress, that only gets worse. This is why people are asking, why are you in such a hurry? Why such a rush? Well, this is why. I challenge you, take $2.5 million next year. Anybody with a calculator, anybody savvy enough with their phones or calculator, take $2.5 million and divide that by 365. Okay, somebody tell me what that number is. JP, show the next slide.
$6,849.31.5068.
So can we run at 6,850?
Yeah.
That's the cost per day that we're going into negative. Per day that we prolong this and don't get to our break even. We're already saying we're projecting for this to take effect, whatever new rate we decide upon. We're hoping to take effect January 1st, because we don't want to hit people all at one time. We understand that folks are in a difficult situation here. I want everybody to also be educated and know that that's going to come at a cost. What is that cost? $616,500 is the equivalent of when I take 6850 multiply it by 90. This is what we're talking about. So everybody understands the situation. This is not, we're not trying to pull wool or anybody's, this is the reality of the situation right now in the stands. Okay. Over the years, I will tell you the utility fund, some of the money that were in there or have been in there for capital improvement, that we're going to touch on capital improvement at the end of the presentation, if we even get there. I want to make sure that we get through this part primarily before we start discussing different options. Okay. Whatever's been in the reserve for the utility fund has been intended to do some capital improvement that has not been done today. It is illegal to take those funds and use them for your regular O&M. You're borrowing money to pay your day-to-day. No different than if we go right now to a check cashing place to try to get a cash advance. Right? It's not a very economical way of living. I'm being honest. That's what we're facing right now if we try to use some of these borrowed funds that are not intended. Next slide.
Senator,
Sure.
to be clear, you use that a lot, to be clear. Those, you refer to them as borrowed funds. But the reality is, those funds that are in the reserve are the result of some past water bond that the city agreed to, correct? What year was that?
So there's a 2020 bond money on the. And I vote for 2 senators. The money that's borrowed for that bond is very equipment and it's not. Again, just drop it on in fund. You can do capital improvements, both water, wastewater, even street. But it has to, that bond is sold on the fact of doing the capital.
Was there a previous bond?
There was 2017 bond, I believe that's what, right?
That was very limited. There was limited funding.
There are limited funds left, you said?
Yes.
That are in the reserve.
That were for projects that may have been done under budget or may have been, savings may have occurred, what have you. So the reality is we don't have a lot of reserve. Right now, what a reserve show is essentially in accounting world, we show it as deceiving. Because it shows there's money in there, but the money that's in is intended for savings. Right? It's intended for projects that were intended to occur that have not taken place. And so I need everybody to understand what's
I guess this is where I come back to. When on the accounting side, those are restricted dollars. In nonprofit accounting, when they changed the rules about 3 years ago, we actually have to designate those things as restricted. And I looked at the recent Texas City bond, budget, and, another city as well, I can't recall right now. And they, with clarity, have the notes in there that say this is restricted, these are restricted funds. Because we're creating our own problems, is what I'm telling you. We're creating our own problem. You know, Laura's thinking, oh, look at this, or I'm thinking of this, oh, we've got $3 million in the reserve. And yet it's not really a reserve for these purchases. So if these little things, I believe, will help us all.
Rick is taking these notes, I see, and I know we've been part of this. This is the biggest headache that we have, right? It's clearing up misconceptions and getting to the root of what we
And I told you this, I appreciate it because there has not been that clarity or that interest since I was by city managers in this area.
Well, we're getting there. We're not there yet. We are not there yet,
Yeah.
but we're getting there. Okay, but that number that's on there is one thing we could all agree on. We're 2.5 million short, and you take that number divided by 365, that's the cost per day that we're going in the negative. Okay,
So the one above that, 6,850. What's the 90?
90 is 90 days because we're expecting to
The
not
90 days.
enact new rate until January.
Oh, okay.
There's January. So essentially, assuming we take the next couple of months to get this right. And you want it to be, it's that will deficit will climb too, if we don't take effect until January 1, which is kind of what we were anticipating doing. We anticipated January 1 because we had a feeling that it's going to take us that long to work through these sessions, get enough public input, make sure we're all ready. We may not all agree, but doggone, I want to make sure everybody's clear. That's one thing I want to be sure. Okay. All right, JP, next slide. I think this is where I step off and you guys take over. They're going to walk you through a few scenarios as to what they look like, what they entail. This is the one that we call the rip the Band-Aid scenario. This gets us to a break-even point in year 1. Rick, is this who's taking over? This JP?
I think JP's better.
JP, is this you?
Nobody wants to talk to Rick.
Yeah, I think, okay, well, if they can't hear us, then.
JP, he's talking. I think your headset's not connected properly.
Hi, Calvin. Hey, Calvin, thanks.
Hey, guys. JP's just sorting out an audio issue and then he'll be talking just a second.
Until he's ready, I'll go ahead and show you. This is option 1. This takes us to break even in year 1. Okay. This takes us there in year 1. We're going to show you what that looks like on your bill in a second. Okay. I'm not going to just.
Yeah.
We're going to show you because there's. You need to see this and you need to see how it relates to you in the pocket. Okay. And everybody here probably has different water bills. I guarantee you probably have the highest water bill in this house. I have a small army living in my home, and I compare to everybody, and I guarantee you probably have the highest. Yeah.
Test
yeah.
1, 2.
JP, are you back?
Okay, you guys can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, sorry about that. I just had some technology issue. All right.
So real quick, just for everybody to understand the 2 different shades, because a lot of questions have been asked, well, how much is residential? How much is commercial? That's what the 2 different shades of, what is that, orange and brown, is that what that is? That's what those 2 different shades represent. Okay, so everybody understand, if you notice, it's roughly, a little more than half, if you will, and a little less than half now, but it obviously progresses. We are be very cognizant that the capital side will probably take a bigger hit when it comes to increases as it relates. At this point, JP, it's all yours from this point.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know if there's, you've already spoken to this slide. This is just looking at generating the 2.5 million with one single increase of 90%, which could be implemented across the board. So you'd start with your base rate and go up through your tiers, and every one of those numbers in there, we'll see how that looks in a minute. Every one of those numbers almost doubles, not quite 90% is not quite doubling, but pretty close. So doing that is what we call the 1-year plan, and it just gives an idea of what it would take to solve this all at once. Bearing in mind again that even if you do this starting in January, you'll already have missed 25% of whatever this increase is. So, we've been modeling as though this is happening at the start of the fiscal year, which is not the case, but at least this is there for illustration that this is what it takes. All right, should I go to the next one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so a 2-year plan, the idea with a 2-year plan, and you could imagine there being a 3-year plan and a 4-year plan and so on. It's to try to balance between, the rate shock, and what the harsh reality is to the ratepayers, to try to ease them into what the revenue requirement is over a couple of years, bearing in mind again that throughout that time, you're going to continue to fund your deficit with those reserves that we just saw a moment ago. If we come back here, so, multiply this number by, well, it just would be a larger number, that if you're not going to get your entire needed amount in year 1, it means that the difference, which is, about this amount right here, is, it looks to me like about $1.5 million. That money will have to come from somewhere. Again, this is just there to illustrate that, have to balance how harsh it is, and whether you can find some money somewhere to help there be a little bit of a softer landing for this than just to tear the Band-Aid off all at once. I could pause there, Caesar. The next slides kind of go into how that actually looks to the rates. You want me to jump right in there right now, or should I just pause a moment?
Yeah, I wanted to take a moment to look at this, and the reason why I wanted to pause here is we talked about alternate funding sources to make up that. So that little red arrow that you have up is now JP. We talked about where's that money going to come from, right? And the truth is it's going to have to come from alternate funding sources, such as the reserves, that you can add some ARPA funds to do it, which again, the intent of these funds are intended for improvement, moving forward, not stopping or making up what we're short. Right? That's the intention of what's going on here. Unfortunately, we have no choice in that. It's gonna have to come from somewhere. But that shading amount, that red or pink, we're gonna have to come up with somewhere if we go with this scenario. We're not saying we're against it. We're just saying that it's gonna have to come from somewhere, some alternate to break even. Okay.
Do we already know where that would come from? We have
Sadly,
ideas where-
we're gonna have to put some ideas together. We're gonna take money that was intended for improvements or for reserves or for a rainy day, right? To pray for no hurricanes and pray for, it's basically, there's a lot of ifs that are tied to that in order to get that happen. We're gonna have to take, a step back, right? And understand that comes with certain restrictions as well. Mayor Pro Tem discussed it the other day. We talked about what happens if we get too low below our reserve amount. What happens if we get too low? The truth is our bond rating goes down. Our bond rating is usually what makes us look good in front of banks that allow them to loan us money at the best rate possible. I guess that's my best way to summarize what that means.
Like when your credit score go low.
Our credit score, right? It's easier to go get a loan for a home if you have, 20% in your bank account.
And hadn't we already, the prior city manager, wasn't there a time period where he was taking out of the reserve also? Things like a position?
To my understanding that's something that has been going. We've been. Rob and Peter pay Paul for it.
According to the budget book in 2021, we done $2.5 million
For salaries.
From the general fund.
from the operating utilities, the utility fund, was 2.5 million.
So this has been an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
This is not a now thing.
Right,
This is not.
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, it's not. This is not a right now thing. This is it's been going on for a while and it's about to get worse. So this is, again, going back to SB2 and how we want to be user based and how we want to keep our property taxes low. Well, our property taxes have been higher, but it's not because we're spending the money with Spur it's because it's been used to support your actual utility side, which hasn't been active. So the root of the problem, which I told you as I spend more time here and getting deeper to finding, is actually water. we said at the beginning, when we asked for more water from the water authority, the basis of the situation has been that. Right, it really has, and no truer is that on the fact of the budget we just passed at 46 cents, it's lean. Right now, we know we're not gonna buy anything for the next 3 months because we're all just, it's like one of the, I think we're doing an earthquake coming, everybody just hold on. We'll assess our damage afterwards, everybody has to sit back and see how we're doing. That's the approach that we're taking for the next 9 years. Try to get in through the holidays, but this is where this takes the next step. Okay, JP, can you show the next slide? Yep, so go ahead, I'm sorry.
What, and I'm gonna designate this as a, what's our amount in our unrestricted reserve for water?
I don't know the answer to that question exactly. But to be very honest with you, from everything I've
The
seen
ending
so
fund
far,
balance, according, this is out of the budget. Talk to Susie about that, I don't want to get ahead of her. This is out of the budget. At the end of 2021, we were negative $500,000 in reserve. Negative $500,000.
So we have no,
We will be a negative $2 million in reserve at the end of this year, in 3 days.
so there are no, the answer is, there are no unrestricted reserve in the water fund. That's the answer,
yes,
correct?
And that reserve the utility, not just the water.
And the
Because
utility,
we've been running together
and when we say utility, then we're saying water and sewer
and waste.
and wastewater. So and when that occurs, which is what's been happening in the past, in order to meet the deficit, that's when we fit into our general reserve.
or M&M, our general fund, M&M.
General fund.
Meaning if at the end of the year, they've been successful in not spending those cash in hand at the end of the year, you use that first.
Whereas the bills are getting paid.
Right, the bills keep getting paid, that keeps getting paid and such. But we wipe that out first. I mean, that's a general account. You're gonna take whatever you have before you give them anything.
Right.
Correct.
Rick, what was the two figures
At the end of last year, we was
in 2021?
At the end of 2021, the ending fund balance was negative 476, 658.
Okay, and in 3 days will
It
be,
was estimated in the 2022 budget, it was estimated to be a positive 1.5 billion. But it's going to be a negative 1.9.
Without any changes.
correct.
And that's because revenue is down.
So this is why we've been stingy with hiring positions and not being able to, and caution to the rollback and what have you, because of this situation. I need everybody to understand how we got here and the why. Forget what we're gonna propose. We gotta understand that first before we move forward.
Right.
And if it's not clear now, I will have before we offer a single solution, I want to make sure we have that first. These are two options. We have another option we're gonna show you. That's somebody in the room, I'm not gonna say who it is, unless they want to volunteer, propose something. And it's another option we're looking at for everybody to understand what that option is. We're gonna call that one the penny option, but you'll see that one short. JP, next slide, please. And the one after that. Okay, so here's what this looks like. Okay, so I don't know what everybody here uses. Okay, I don't know what anybody here uses in their home, or what have you, but I want you to look at what this means. All right, if you consume, and who here consumes less than 1,000 gallons? Anybody? You do. All right, so Mr. Ross, your bill right now, $8.53. Under this new Band-Aid model, you're gonna bump up to $16.21. Okay, that's what that solution does in year one, and then it stays pretty even. Right, that's what that one is. If you are anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 gallons, you're gonna calculate what your rate's gonna be base plus how many gallons you have. So if you have 2,000 gallons and 853 plus 372, you're paying $12 a month for your water. Your new rate will be 1621 plus 707, which is roughly 2328. My math would be right. And I need everybody to understand what that difference means in intensity.
That's what I don't want to shock you. This is commercial rate.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, this is.
No, that's residential.
I'm sorry, I apologize, thank you, JP, take the square off of the one up top. You gotta look at residential base and commercial base. All right, please make sure everybody understands, okay? If you're a business, then it's different, so you're gonna take 853, hold on, because you're highlighting commercial. You have to highlight
Oh,
below.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, all right,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's do like this. Yeah.
Yeah,
there we
thank,
go.
thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
The snapshot that I took out the first water meeting after the last one. It showed for the Band-Aid model. In it was like 2047 was the base rate. The 1 year, 140% increase.
Yeah, that was 140%. Yeah, we've not taken that approach.
Okay,
I'll explain why, because that one included capital improvements in it.
okay.
We backed out capital improvements.
That one, yeah,
Thank you for clarifying that.
I just.
You can actually see your internet connection is unstable. So, I want to make sure that everybody understands what this means, okay? If you look right next to it, that explains to you what the 2-year plan is, and we're gonna make this a little bit clearer to see in a second. All right, we're gonna, in 2 slides from now, we get to what's a little bit clearer to see. All right, but I want everybody to understand what the differences are. So instead of the 1-year option, you go from 853 base to 1621 versus 2-year option, you pretty much get to the same number, slightly higher, but you get there in 2 years. Why is it higher? Well, you gotta make up a difference somewhere, which you lost in the first year, you didn't go up all the way. All right, that's what that difference of 50 cents, 49 cents. All right, JP, next slide. Okay. This is important. This is the penny. Okay. This is really important for folks to understand. Essentially, what does it mean? Is this is what it looks like if every single person pays 1 penny per gallon. Right now, we're consuming approximately 4.9. Excuse me, what is the number we're consuming? 440 million. 440 million. So everybody understand, this is what we're charging. Okay, we're charging 400, go ahead and call it 440. This is what that looks like under the penny plan. But Mr. I won't say what it was. We slightly modified it to where we increased commercial by 1 to 1.5. So a penny and a half per gallon. So that way commercial is paying a higher rate than residential. For their business, which they do now. So it's consistent with what we currently have. And again, all this is tweakable. You might tell me, well, show me what 1.1 penny per gallon is. What is 1.7 for commercial look like? That's what we can play around with today, if you choose to, as to how we're going to make it.
So that was my idea, and I did my next math based off of the RIP Band-Aid 140%. And if we raised the residential rate to 1.5 cents. Starting now, we're at 5-year revenue. Based off of your 140. And then I guess I would put 2 cents a gallon on your commercial. And that would be at your 5-year revenue for the rip the Band-Aid, everybody's just gonna scream and yell because it hurts really bad, but
Again, we're gonna show a comparison in a second, so everybody understands it. But this is, we call it the penny model, because for residents, it will literally be, for every 1 gallon you consume, you're gonna pay a penny. That's what this model is.
is that a part and separate from the previous slide?
This is a different model.
This is a standalone.
It's a different model. We have a 1-year model, 2-year model, and this would be the penny model.
But remodel.
3 models so far. And we can do 100 models, one. This is where we are right now. We're piecing this because we've now taken capital improvement out. We don't like confuse folks. We're gonna explain how we're gonna address capital later, because that is at the will of what the residents want to do. We know this has been going on for 60, 80, 100 years. How much longer it goes and how aggressive it will be up to the group. And that can be put out to vote whatever way everybody feels that we need to. We'll come to that in a second. JP, next slide. This is important. Okay? This is a comparison of what it looks like for your house in whatever range you fall. Today's model is $44.34 if you consume 10,000 gallons. This is what it looks like if you go with each one of the plans. There's one you want to take a picture of and you want to keep a note of or whatever. This is probably a good slide to do because this one tells you what this looks like. Okay? This shows you what it looks like. Right now, we're at 44.34. Notice a common theme here, where we need to be. It also takes into account where we need to be for our commercial side, assuming our consumption is what it is. We consume 320, I take that back. We bill for 320 million gallons residential a month, and approximately 117 million gallons commercial. Not per month, per year. Sorry, I was wrong. Thank you. Per year. I think you did, but I want to make sure that I'm saying it correctly. That's what we bill for. Okay? All right, we're gonna get to how much we actually get billed for from Gulf Coast Water, because that's what the biggest issue.
So approximately 30 million a month. 360.
A little less.
Yeah, 30 to 40 million a month.
Yeah, it depends on you home residential, commercial, and obviously that's average, because it goes up, summer months is higher. All right, so we're there. Does everybody understand this slide? We can bring it back up, we can share. Remember, if everybody wants this, we can print this presentation out as it is. If you tell me print out just that slide, I can print out just that one slide.
I can get a copy of that slide.
Absolutely. We will make sure everybody walks out of here. If anybody wants any of the other slides, you tell me if you want the whole thing, we can make that happen. I just want to make sure everybody understands where we are. Okay, since as of today, where we're at, just we're brainstorming right now together. Okay. Notice what that does to the commercial side as well. Everyone's being faced with these rate increases, it's not just residents. Remember, residents are, there are twice the consumers that commercial is. That's what it is today. Think about that. We have 117 million gallons a year. We barely have any commercial in the city compared to other cities. How's that going to change in the future as we get more businesses? All right, just keep that in mind. This is why we're looking at this model, because we're looking for the long term. Okay, we got to think long term. We've been thinking reactive, or post-reactive, if you will, all this time. Now we're moving in a different direction. All right.
And once again, just in my mind, that's the rule. This is only assuming, even during a 2-year plan, this cost are both our water costs and our operating costs at the $5 million level.
And paying off the debt we have on the books. And that little bit of debt that's kind of crescendoing. Because we have to pay that. Part of our operating costs. All right, that was assumed before we got here, we got to pay.
And this is an observation that's going to require legal counsel. When you structure anything in Texas by pennies, there are those in Texas that will say that's a sales tax, which we're not permitted to do. So I'm just FYI, that's something
Sure, and
on your list.
we call it the penny model because that's what it equates to. We're not calling, we're just saying what that equates to. We're not calling it because we're saying penny, that's just what the math happens to equate to. And so everybody kind of understood. And Ms. Rock, we took your option and we kind of edited a little bit for the commercial side.
Right.
To be in line with what we're doing on.
And today, after I got with the students, I sat down with what I had off the YouTube and was, you know, punching in and trying to figure out what the, because if you're gonna take it from me, just take it all.
And that's fine. It's just, we gotta make sure that this is fair to everybody, right? It might be two parts of a jump to go from 44 to 84%.
Right.
Even though it's been a long time coming, you'll see with your reference materials, are these way lower than everybody else. Here's another thing I want to take a moment and touch on. All right, JP, come on to the next line. This is our rate now that we need to revisit in 2 years. We can evaluate what the growth of the city is going to say. Because that might alter what rate we want to go from then on. In fairness of that, okay? Rates should be looked at regularly. Usually every 2 years. They need to be looked at because the industry changes. Problem is that we haven't looked at it for a very long time. Okay, and that's what put us in this position now. Right?
And that's, and we, I mean, that's some of the issues that we talked about, is it's been too many years, at the rate of gone up, going forward. We want to convince both governing body and the public that rates need to go up every year. You know, we won't want to mislead anybody that we're gonna do this 40 and 30%, then you're not gonna see a rate increase for another 2 years. That's not the case. So the reason we're having to go so hard is because we haven't. And we need to go up anywhere from 3 to 8% a year, depending on the economy. So right now, everybody hears about inflation. Those inflation impacts every us in, you know, as a restaurant guy, before I became a school teacher, why I sat down, I was able to, our cost of materials skyrocketed. Yeah, you know, we've had change orders on projects from contractors because like street project, tank projects, we're just getting killed out there with price increases.
So in fairness to where we gone so far, are there any questions through this point? We're gonna dip slightly into capital improvement. We can understand where we are. We have different models we're gonna show you that, so we understand what that means. JP, next slide. We talked about this in the capital improvement side, what we talked about with these different areas. Zone 1 through 3 and 4 through 6. You notice they're spread out a little bit. Slightly starting in 2023 and then going onwards if we want. You know, there's a peak in one project and we're spacing them out. Originally, we wanted to do them all kind of at one time. We understand that that might be too hard for everybody. But just understand the capital improvement side, we will take as fast or as slow as this focus group guides us. We all understand that there's a problem with our water system. We all understand that to avoid these 12-inch solutions and patchwork here and cut the earth open and do this and patch it back up, and now you got potholes, and that's what your break even does. If you want to see real changes to the 3 things that everybody's talking about water, they want to change. What are those things? Water quality, number 1. Number 2 is pressure, and 3 is address our water. Okay, these plans address those things, begin to address those things. Begin to, but they're very drastic. We need about $60 million to get a dip into what we need to do.
Are you concentrating on one over another, like quality over pressure?
So basically, you guys are experts at this, so please help me out.
So it was identified in 2016 that we have equivalent of about 12 areas that are still currently utilizing 2-inch galvanized water line.
Did you bring the pipe?
Okay, so
Yeah, everybody needs to see. Everybody needs to see what it is.
Yeah.
You gotta see what your water's running.
I know exactly what that's. So the problem with these 2-inch water line is one, over time, there's been buildup in the pipe, so you lose pressure, you lose capacity. So that means pressure loss. 2, you know, these pipes have been in the ground for past their their useful life.
Life,
Yeah, usually these pipes, you know, maybe 20, 30 years. The newer PVC pipe lasts about 50 or so years. They don't decompose, and they're the right size. They have capacity to provide pressure. The other area that no one's like to talk about is when you have a 2-inch pipe, you can't hook a hydrant on it. There's no hydrant. From a public safety standpoint, there's no hydrants in very few. There may be just where all the main trunk line is, but there's no hydrants in any of those areas. So if you have a break or you have a fire, you gotta wait for a water truck. So that is one of the major issues we have.
Coincidentally, correct me if I'm wrong here, these 12 zones you've identified as one of the greatest areas of need. 2 were probably the biggest leaks are, 3 were the oldest pipes are, and 4 where the biggest public safety concern is, probably the lowest socioeconomic area of the entire town, is all for the most part east of 45.
The older part of town.
The older part of town. The oldest part of town. So this is why this keeps occurring, right? This keeps happening. Right, you're gonna see a second what the pipe looks like. Really important, you guys understand that there's a prevalent problem, and we can go as fast or as slow as the public approves.
That's the street D, but
Yeah.
Part of it.
part of it.
Part of it.
Their clarity of it's just something that is inconsistent with what Rick said at our last council meeting, when I asked the question on useful life of the pipe, what pipe can we replace with? Rick said it was gonna be back with, what kind of pipe did you take out? Galvanized? Yeah, that's
Still, yeah.
yeah, but when I asked you, you talked about being replaced useful life with galvanized. I think, with PVC.
This is what it's gonna be like.
He corrected himself at the meeting.
This is what it's
Or
gonna be.
And
Well, they're
Well, no, I know that.
Yeah, 2-inch.
Bigger than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, bigger than that.
Why?
I thought.
So I want you to also notice, there's gaps in the city right now that might resolve. This is just one we're able to repair.
Right. Yeah.
But there's areas where our guys are moving up into to repair some of these 12, 18, 24 inch pieces of pipe. And they run in, there's no pipe there but here. Just water is running through earth. So you wonder, well, why not water sometimes brown? Yes.
Wow,
So what? This is what it's currently running through. Right? So this is not for dramatics or for show. This is
No, no,
reality.
no.
I need you to understand what we're actually talking about. This is important. So this is what everybody needs to understand. This is what we're talking about. Okay, so there's no questions about it. This is what we're talking about replacing in these 12 zones.
So that, it's not just the pipe. Now, the water loss that comes out of it.
Coming
You
from
could-
the leak, the hole.
The leaks.
crack.
Yeah, if you have what Rick has mentioned in the past is with these pipe, the 2-inch pipe, if there's a leak, you won't notice it. If you have a standard size distribution line, if there's a leak, you'll notice it.
Well, with those, you won't notice it right away until it's the middle of a drought and there's still a green spot in the yard,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
You're like, I wonder why that's,
But
still.
part of
This
the
is what
reason,
we call secret.
part of the reason why the city had to buy additional water from GCWA is because we're using more than what we, not using, we're losing
Yeah.
more than what we can, you know,
I mean, that,
than,
I bet you if we canvassed all 20,000 residents and asked, hey, would you pay an extra half a cent on your water bill per gallon of water? They'd all say, yes, if I get all my stuff fixed, you know?
Well, and this
And I
is,
know I'm trying to push because my department, my culinary department, they built a new high school over here. They're not planning on putting the culinary in. Texas City, my students have to come bus from the high school to the middle school to my lab. But because it's across the street and my lab was a part, what I found out during my open house was that it was the old,
snack room when it was the high school. So it's not really a culinary lab. I got one stove. So I'm trying to get them to put the new culinary lab and part of the new, child development center right there up at Texas Avenue, right off of 146, between those schools. You've got a lot of people there.
That's, having talked to CIP, that's one of their goals, we gotta look, get past this switch phase. I wanted to make sure everybody understood what we're talking water to my. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Catch up full here. Say, repeat, please, what you said about 2-inch lines and fire hydrant.
Public safety.
Public safety, fire safety. The 2-inch line does not provide enough pressure, enough water capacity to operate a fire, to run a fire hydrant.
So our fire hydrants, let's call it an old town of Marque, are connected to what size pipe?
There are lines that are 6-inch, that are 8-inch. And it's sporadic. But the feed coming off of those trunk lines are all 2-inch.
Like we'll run each side, meters, 6-inch, both 6-inch, rods.
So, yeah, so
But everything else over there.
the main road is, the trunk lines are all along the main road, and it feeds out to these little neighborhood streets, and these neighborhood streets are all 2-inch lines.
No, they built, but there are fire hydrants.
Every so often,
Like
Yeah.
there's 500 on Marion. But most likely that is too.
no, it has to be a minimum of
There's
6-inch.
fire hydrants.
It's 6, yeah.
But
But
if it's being
beyond
fed
that-
by a 2-inch.
Well,
It wouldn't be.
It's just that on some of the street corners, what you're thinking about, some of the fire hydrants facing pretty far
Yeah.
apart. So.
Yeah,
typically,
yeah.
and So what happens is you might see a fire hydrant on the corner of the street. Well, the 2-inch is actually running down, the street, feeding all the houses. The fire hydrant is thinking of the 4-inch line. That's on that right. So that's how they feed the fire hydrant.
Yeah, and most of the fire hydrants, as Rick mentioned, is at the corner. Because current standards, a fire hydrant have to be within 500 feet spacing for residential. And majority of the city does not have that spacing. The old part doesn't.
These guys don't have a fire hydrant in my.
Yeah, part of that is,
And so I want to touch on that because some do, some don't. Here's one of my pet peeves, okay, and I'm just going to voice it. It's when we're talking about water loss, but when I drive by and I see a fire hydrant being flushed, just flushed. A lot of people that don't know, and let's talk about another misconception as to why. You're governed by TCP. People are kind of just have you guys explain why do we flush?
It's required by TCQ regulations, flush all the.
So,
And we do that in order to maintain chlorine. It's what it's really about.
you have stagnant water,
Because you got stagnant water.
and that's bad.
Because of water lines like this, chew them up. And unfortunately, we got a lot of chewing water lines that have flushing capabilities. So those are water lines that have replaced the red one here 3 months ago. Long line coming off 4. There was no flush point. That line is completely blocked. So we didn't have any real flushing. We had to put in a new line. So typically that actually been in as a capital improvement project, $30,000. Line replacement, we did put it in. But we put it underneath emergency situations, it's costly. Than what it would to plan out a capital improvement project we were doing. 10,000 feet or 8,000 feet of line instead of 460 feet. And so contractors, they did those jobs a lot differently. So they can come in and do that kind of work.
so it's safe to say that because of how the city was master planned many years ago. Sure. Some of the way that they designed these ends to be, they designed them to be actual dead ends when it comes to these lines and these fire hydrants. And one of the things that we're trying to address in the 12 zone projects is for some of them, not all of them, connect. Why is that important? So the lines are connected, there's an actual flow of water, which will hopefully eliminate how much water we're actually.
You have to flush, you put it out to flush. Because this 12 provision
Well, Mark. Initially. You guys all know, we're dependent on wells. The initial structure of our water lines in the city. Were run from the well to I guess, Baker's front lines. That's the way it was set up. Parts of the city did not have access to water. We had to have our own wells as well, apart and separate from the city. So the further you got away from, let's call it this area of town, or where the wells were located, you did not have access to any sort of city, but you were paying city services. You also say that. Okay, and so originally when my folks, they had built out there the first house on the road, there was a well and there was septic. We have our septic tank still there covered. And the other parts of the city, especially in our African American part of the city, their services were not extended to that part of the city either. I was just say that. I mean, a lot of things, you're right. They were not extended.
So what you're saying is historically, we have neglected certain parts.
And there's that, this is also why everyone, so I would ask for clarity purposes, this is great, I think it might be a great discussion, the fire limitations that we have, right? We are interested to protect our own. And there's the other areas, and when you're talking about areas 1 through 3, designate those areas.
No, certainly, no,
It's
again,
about that.
we did that at the last capital. Folks that were here, we asked, you want to take any of these out of order, any which way you want to do, so we did do that during that focus group, for those of you that were present. So what I wanted to do now is we're gonna quickly go through a couple of the next slides, so everybody can see what they are, and I want to allow enough time for open discussion on any other models you want to see, because we have a sharp cutoff. We want to get out here and deliver the meet. We want to keep our consultants on time and such. It's already 7 o'clock. So next slide, quickly, we can go through. In order to do this, if you want them in these years, okay, if you want the capital movement to take place in these years, well, actually, we gotta borrow the money too. We don't have, we install that, we barely have enough to pay the money. Okay? So this is what it would entail to do that. Next slide. This is how that debt repayment breaks down over the years. Now, we're not stopping in 2032. This is just, we want to change the model. Obviously, this scales on and on until we pay off the debt. Like if you notice, when we're paying shade under $1 million a year. How we're gonna come up with that $1 million, we're gonna go over in a second. Next slide. This is how that breaks down. Looks like we're over 800, closer to probably 900,000 a year. This is for the debt service only for these areas. Okay, you want to do more areas, it's gonna cost more. This is how that breaks down to pay back these dollars that you identified. This is the next phase of what we talked about that last capital improvement meeting of what it's gonna take to go to the next step.
We have 7 through 12.
And that's 15 miles.
This is 15 mile. For everybody's sake of understanding, how many miles of water line would you suspect, I'm not gonna hold you, do we have in this?
Probably closer to 100.
About 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
Right,
this
right.
is replacing 15% of our water lines. Okay,
So this is just fixing the.
hence why we said, and mind you, remember what we said, technically, just like streets, parks, lights, whatever you do, sidewalks, when you're done replacing them, when you go through the whole cycle, guess what time it is again? Go back and do it again.
I think that's a good, that's something to really highlight for the community so that they realize this isn't, we're not talking about doing the whole city. This is, this, and then you're gonna have to do another stint, and then it's gonna be all, I mean, it's just gonna be continuous, really.
So, very important, thank you, it's very good, very important. Excellent. Next slide. Wait, before we go to the next slide. Right now, in your bills, you have, in your water bills, you have a parks fee. All right, it's $2 a month. All right, it's $2 a month that go towards the development of parks.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm gonna be honest, with you.
Thank you.
I don't know why this model wasn't thought of. But when you look at the realms of where the city feels about their parks versus how they feel about their streets or lights or their water, it should have been a fee put in for the water capital really a long time ago. We built a structure to slowly get to the point we want to be in that sense. And then we took that away from your water rate and put it solely on your capital improvement. Want you guys to see what that looked like moving forward. JP, next slide. Here's what a 2, 4, 6, 8, and then $10 a month model looks like to pay back said that you would take towards your water rates, towards your capital improvement, I'm sorry. Okay, the blue line represents how the debt would have to be paid for these two areas, 1 through 6, and how you would then incorporate that moving forward. So this would be a monthly rate in addition to your water rates, should you choose to do this. Now, is this the best rate that everybody would be happy with? Probably not, but we had to take it away from what we were talking about. So folks understood that what we're talking about is breaking even first. That's our first problem, guys. We got, you heard 100 miles of water line, we got to probably replace. But before we get to a single one, we got to get to the break even. It's not gonna matter. Okay, this is what that model shows. It doesn't get it, we need to be at $10 a month per tap. And we need to, but we're not gonna get there right away because it's not realistic to do that to folks right away.
I have a question.
Ma'am.
So do you not suspect after 2027 with $10? I'm gonna talk about 28, 29 on, that may not go up above $10.
The reason we did the models, we didn't want to go too high. And we broke that down as to where we were to get this amount of work done.
But that is a possibility.
It
No,
depends, it depends on how aggressive we choose to be to pay back. Okay. And also how much more you want.
One of the range scenarios. Building, typically you want your rates, you can actually put money into a capital reserve. If you don't do that, you end up borrowing everything to do capital improvement. That costs money to, we borrow money pretty low. Right now, there's some options on the table that we can even get some money forgiven. Projects that will that happen from here for the next 10, 20 years, maybe not. You know, typically building business, which is what you're trying to do here, is being able to put some money into capital reserves so you can go out and do $3 million worth of water line every year. Because as you say, you can't stop doing it. You know, at 90 miles of water lines, if you're going to replace water lines, typically last 60 to 70 years. Just do the math. You've got to be replacing water lines every year and stay up with how much you've got.
it'll be a different focus group, and we'll be back here in so many years. It's like, well, back then they only did this.
So one of the things we want to do is we want to build
Your website here. The hundreds, 200, 300, party graphic. Is that the monthly income?
No, that's what total you would accumulate in a year's time at that rate. So in year one, you would accumulate roughly 175,000 at $2 a month, whatever that math equates to. Then year two, you would balloon to an additional 325 to 340,000, looks like.
I'm not.
A year.
Yeah.
But then we take that rate by saying 7,000 units, right? 7,000 taps times that rate times 12, or 12 months. So it's 14,000 a month times 12. That's how we got to that. And such and so forth and so forth. So these numbers, and I will be very astute to give it somebody, credit, somebody in this room actually came up with this model of what this looks like. Okay, so everybody understands what that equates to.
And I was gonna ask you to do that. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, this is
Yeah.
what we're about.
Yeah.
Everybody understands. Now, mind you, in year
But
one,
again,
right, in year one, we're doing great because we're ahead of where the debt is. But if we choose to borrow the money and we're saying that we want to borrow it, then we're just banking on it a little bit to be able to get to more debt. So that's what this slide represents. And I see that you're doing that, JP. Thank you. We will build more on this for the sake of time. When this becomes final, we'll be able to share that even more. Remember, this is the draft.
In commercial businesses pay the $2 park fee.
We did. You can find out. But I believe it's on all. So.
JP, next slide. This is how this all equates, right? If you notice what this does. If you notice the light blue line, that was a line of debt that we need to pay back. The brown line represents how we're going to pay back the debt. The debt would be paid back by your $2, $4, 6, 8, 10 months to eventually get there. Now, mind you, just because this graph stops at 2032 does not mean that it's over. It goes on. It's just, I mean, this thing, we could stretch it out, maybe 20 years. Yeah. Maybe we should write down when each one will be paid off. We can add that note for the sake of everybody saying how this will take over, how this. So we can add that note. All right, JP, next slide.
I think that's it, Caesar.
I see a couple more.
Two more.
Yeah, I think
This was just very, we're still working on the models on the bill examples, what they look like. It was just showing you, well, if you did this model, here's what your bills would look like. But you got to understand and relate to the fact that that does not include your sewer, sanitation, and such. We could, this is going to be an ongoing discussion. This is an ongoing, this is going to be, the problem is not just in the water side, okay, it's on the entire utilities. The difference is, and I'll be very open with you guys, as a business, it's very simple. Restaurant down the street, you mentioned restaurants, they have a choice. They could either raise their rates and you take it, or raise the rates and you don't take it, it's no business their salary. Well, that's your choice when you have it. You don't have much of a choice. In this case, we're having the community be part of that choice. So we all share that situation. We all share what we're going through. That's very important that we understand this case. Yes, sir.
It's not waving the white flag. by the way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If you go back to the previous slide. The red, the borrowed fund.
Yes.
In 20, so next year,
If we go this route,
if we go this route, this suggests that we're gonna go out and borrow.
$13 million. Not next year. We borrowed in 23 to be effective for 24.
Okay.
Because it takes the time to probably engineer these projects, get them ready. We're not gonna borrow for we're gonna borrow for when we.
The 2-inch water line project, which been brought up with in a study in 2016, is 25 million.
Now it's 25 million back. in
That's
2016.
there.
It's
What do
40 million now.
That's
Yes.
probably double. With COVID.
So it's 25, I mean, so the bottom line is we're facing big time issues, right? We're not gonna solve them all today. But I want to make sure we understood where we were. JP, can you go back to slide 13, please? Because I think that's gotta be the culminating point. And here we can talk about different models if you so choose. We have a little bit of time, okay? What route do we want to go to break even? Originally, Mr. Ross, you were right. We had a 140% model. That was the most aggressive model, because that got us fixing water lines immediately. Right. It got us working and it didn't have this capital improvement fee attached to it. That is the beyond with the band. That is like, let's go, let's get it done right now, let's make it happen. Right? We need to get this done, let's go get it done now. Is that for everybody? No. Is that fair? Not necessarily. But we needed to present that option so everybody knew that that option exists and what that option was. If you remember, when we presented it, we presented the 25% model.
We're at the 3-year.
We're in the 3-year plan, which essentially was a 25% increase each year for the next 5 years. Right? It got us there, but it gets us there long. Right? But how do you cover up that difference between the time we get there? So this is the point of the night where it gets really tough. Is you got to start telling us what you want to see. In 1 year, 2 year, or any plan, you want to be more aggressive, less aggressive, what do you want to look like? You want to double commercial rates. You want whatever you want to do with just I ask you to follow. How should we do this? Go back to the business perspective. Yes, commercial should be more, and in every model we've had, it's always been more, usually 1.4 higher, so 40% higher. So we can come out with rates. What I ask you is, remember what the consumer, what the business is going to do. What are they going to do? They're going to pass it over to the consumer. So now your restaurant Bill may go up by $5 because they gotta pay more for water. It's all relative. It's all relative. Cause and effect. The question is how do we want to affect that cause? That's what we're very conscious of how this affects folks that are on a restricted income and that have limited water. We're very respectful of that, but we need to keep it fair. Is it producing even more and charging others more? Use your reference materials. If you notice some of the reference materials have different fees for different size taps. Okay, that's another point. We're not there yet. We need about 2 years to get to that point to do that math. If you want us to look at that, we can. And we can get to that. We can give you those numbers, but we need more time to be accurate. To be very honest with you, a lot of us don't know exactly what's underground. Go ahead, please take over.
We're working with finance, so we've got the counts on the meter. What the issue is, in order to extrapolate out those numbers, we need time, which is one of the reasons that we considered pushing these rates back to January. Most utilities, most entities out there have increases in a base rate based on meter size. We don't. I mean, that's something we could put together, we're unable to do that in small time frame that we're working. We have the counts. We know how many meters are out there. It's just a matter of building that into the rate structure and then being able to extrapolate that out with revenue. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking for is revenue, right? Trying to get back to that 5 million. We can do that a lot of ways. Our commercial rates are a little lower compared to our neighbors against our residential rates. So right now, we build in an increase on our commercial rates. Could it be higher? We work under heavy regulations, both TPQ and from the Water Development Board, which regulates water resources in the state of Texas. Their recommendation, highly recommendation, is what they refer to as conservation rate, which is what we're using, is an increasing block rate. More water you buy, and you pay per unit. The penny plan doesn't have that. That's one of the concerns we've got with that plan. Is typically, that's not going to meet conservation policies that are dictated by water development. They want to see those increasing block rates. That's who we're going to plan on borrowing money from. So they look at that in our conservation. And we have that in our rates right now. So to move away from that may not be a good idea. What we've got built into the 1-year plan and the 2-year plan are those increasing block rates. By Water Development Board recommendations, we're not increasing those blocks enough. They recommend a 50% jump between the block. We're a little under that, which would mean the people that are buying over 10,000 gallons a month, both commercial and residential, would be paying more than what you're paying on this chart. That drives up revenue, decreasing some of the pressure on the lower end a little bit. So you can keep the lower end number fine. I mentioned earlier, just operation wise, for us to deliver water to a house with no water at all, it's $35.
That's just to have a tap out there.
That's operating.
Just paying the help and paying the trucks, and you're not buying any water.
So,
Because everything else has to operate.
so to be clear, I have a vacant piece of property. So if I called you all out, put me the water meter out there, and I never turned it on,
Right.
it's $35 a month.
If you don't turn it on, there's no fee, but if you want water service, it's right now it's $8.53.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying I might extrapolate out the numbers, if I take that, our operating cost of $3 million, spread that over 7,100 meters. $35.
So it's $35 with the meter there.
And no water.
I mean, well, if the meter's there, then I got water.
You do, but in the other recommendation for the Development Board, which we don't do and some cities do, is they charge a base rate and you don't get any water. It's a base rate. $12, it's $15. They Hitchcock is like $15 instead. These cities, 19 maybe, and that's no water. That's just a service fee For you to have a meter at your house.
That's above their operating cost. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's just the way they structured their costs. Right now, we're at 853. For 853, you get 1,000 gallons of water.
It's,
One of the scenarios we talked about that was confident on was make it $15 and we'll give you 2,000 gallons of water. Get rid of the $1,000. But we have 1,000 to 2,000 gallon rate. We also have a senior rate, which when we looked at it, we went, I don't know why we're even doing it. Senior discount in the market is $1. That's right. Not $1, not $1 per thousand, not- but $1. I'm not sure why we're doing that.
What, let me ask you this, I'm looking at this water, rate that typically I got to figure. The average resident, what size are they using at our home?
Most parts are 3/4.
3/4.
That's pretty typical in the industry.
So do you have, I don't know if I heard you correctly, do you have the amount that you paying the rate for?
We know how many 3/4 inch meters, we know how many 1 inch meters, we know how many 2 inch meters, we know how many 3 inch meters. Yes, we do.
But do we know the rate that we pay?
It's all 853. Doesn't change.
No matter what.
Doesn't matter what size meter, which is not typical in the industry.
which is part of it.
So we could raise
Yeah.
revenue
Yeah.
just by increasing the fees like everybody else. If you got a 4 inch meter, you should be paying $150 to $200 a month.
Like,
Just me.
So what are we waiting on?
So I mean, that's the recommendation with the focus group. I mean, we have moved in that direction.
No.
What are we waiting on?
My issue with the, what's all the outside, what you say, definition of conservation. 5,000 gallons of water compared to 1,000 gallons, I'm conservative, if they're not. They should be paying a higher per gallon rate than I am.
that's correct.
Well, they are, I think where you've got the numbers. Where the misunderstanding is at is because of that date.
Well,
Because if we're saying it costs $20 for you to have a meter,
right.
if you only use 1,000 gallons, how much are you paying per thousand? $1. Well, right? If you have a meter and you're paying $20 and you use 5,000 gallons, how much are you paying per gallon? Oh. Well, it's just.
I'll tell you what
I
the
mean,
current-
so in theory, the person who's only using 1,000 gallons is paying more because of that service fee.
So based off of the current rate,
Mhm.
I had 1,000 gallons. Are paying 0.00853 a gallon. If I use 2,000 gallons, I decided I wanted to water my lawn, I'm paying 0.006
Right,
dollars a gallon.
right. Because it spreads out that base.
Right, so to be equitable across the board for everybody, at 2,000 gallons, I should be paying $17 a month. At
But
3,000 gallons,
But you understand that won't work.
but no, because
Because you never-
if I get 10 gallons of gas at $1 a gallon, it costs me $10. If I get 20 gallons, it costs me $20.
Right.
So my water rate should be the same as if I were going to a gas pump. It should be equitable across the board. It should be flat base rate, period. And the guys using 50 gallons or 5,000 gallons should be paying the same rate as the guys using 1,000 gallons across the board. So $10 per 1,000, $50 per 5,000.
And typically, what you're saying would be 100% correct if you're comparing it to the gas scenario. Because yes, it is consumed and what have you, you get an actual rate of return. But understand in this case, the way the water works, the pun intended, water works. The way water works is that the reason why that increases as it goes up, or the more someone uses it, is because it's trying to encourage conservation. And by having those rates as such, is what makes you qualifiable to some of these forgivable loans. But I want to also break the point, talked about break even, if we're gonna talk about it in that perspective is. How do you break down what your break even points are? For example, Mr. Ross, let's say your purchase area, you were using 1,000 gallons, right? Let's say Ms. Devine actually gonna go on vacation for a month, because she forgets to tell us that she's going away for a month. You use 1,000, she technically uses none. You're both gonna get charged $853. So maybe the discussion we need to have is, should we have a state, to your point, should we have a standard base rate? For not a single drop of water, just to have the service. What does that cost you for the ability to consume, should you want to? Right, should we build another model here that says, hey, here's what we're gonna move our base to, our base is gonna be $5, right? $5 a month, just to have water, whatever that's gonna cost you. And then for residential, obviously, we're not talking about the other, but I'm just saying, here's gonna be our base rate, and then charge whatever that rate would be per account. Is that something that you guys would want to do?
I'd be willing to look at a model like that, as long as it is the same rate across the board, not, and when, as a submariner, somebody that used to make his own water so that he could scrub himself and we made our own air and everything, when you say conservation, it means 2-minute shower, water on, water off, scrub, water back on, water back off. That was conserving, not a 5-minute shower straight going.
Yeah.
So the word conservation is backwards with what they are saying.
I completely agree. Trust me, I am in that 10,000 gallons. I have a small army, 3 of which are teenagers. So trust me when I think I can relate to what you're saying.
They were in water 30 minutes before they even get in. That's why I only have about one child. The granddaughters have not been able to go outside and bathe in the pond for a little while.
So, yes, yes, sir.
I said that earlier too, when we had gotten together for special services. Appreciate the time to help me. And one of the things that is advantageous is I get to leave from there, and you guys still face this every day, right? So I go back and as like proofreading, it gives me a chance to take something lower as written, and I give it a different perspective. So one of the things that in our earlier conversation that I think is lacking here is the city of Lamar operates a utility company. Utility company consists of water and consists of sewer. Those two sides. Trash is part of that's by way of the contract. First question, is our trash fee is equal to the cost of our trash service?
No, sir.
We're losing or we made it? We're losing.
Because we did not properly prepare to adhere to the increase that was part of the contract. The contract was signed, if I'm wrong, in 2017.
And
That included an 80% increase per year, and we chose that increase.
And at several of those council meetings, the council. The city elected to absorb that cost. Versus passing it on.
Okay, so
So, in the city, what do you have?
Yeah, well, see, the problem is, so I really want to tell you that, so again, we're picking our needs. You know, every time the drive comes by, this year, we stand to about the number, and it's like $1 per house per month. I mean, it's.
That's not minuscule, no.
No,
That's something that needs to be-
I want them to, I think that's at 9 cents per house per month. Again, I'm not taking away from them. But if I come to you all at one time with this, it's gonna take us 6 months to get through it, or at that $6,800.
But if you're looking at this like it's your house, and these are your bills, and they're going up, but you're like, oh, I'm only paying this. Then what you're not paying is just gonna just keep piling up.
Again, I agree with you.
But my problem is we're limited time, and we have to go and not only look at the residential side, but also the commercial side. And also how that dollar is out and what that number is. Our preliminary number is such and saying that we would, yeah, don't quote me, 9 cents per household. But that's starting October 1. Probably,
You know, all I'm suggesting is that the water, the discussion on water should be one that, that gives us the full picture of.
That's very scary.
Well, no, it's not, I believe it's necessary.
Probably because historically, this is where we've gotten to, is it's been brought. My understanding, again, I'm going by history with the room that made it debate. It's been addressed as a whole thing. And it's been too much, and it's been like, Dennis, he doesn't shake his head, hey, it's overwhelming, we can't do that. Go come up with another plan, and come back next, and come back next year. There's been ongoing studies in 2014, another one was done in 2016. We're in 2022, and this thing's got a bunch of plans sitting on the shelf that we're not acting.
All right. I've only been here for a year. I'm ready to kick the door down and just pay my bill. But I wanna know what my bill is.
All I'm suggesting, but I'm talking about it, is please understand the challenges of the city that we're period in terms of our utility side. And I think we also have to understand the sewer charges. That's right, as well too. And the sewer charges are actually, and you guys said it, we have a bit of reserve in that side, right?
So that's
our revenue, our reserve that I was talking about earlier. Are on a utility fund.
Oh, so that's joint.
Well,
That's both. All right, should I clarify that?
so the reserves are nil, but the revenue to expenses on the sewer side is better than what they are on water.
It's not as bad. Well, I just wanted, for the sake of time, these gentlemen have 20 minutes left with us, and they are wizards at what they do. If anybody wants to see any other models that you like, maybe knowing JP is probably building one out already of what the base looks like separate at 0 and then different rates. Does anybody want to see anything that we can start putting together? Because I think that's, I want to leave with something tangible to then say, all right, here's what we're going to present the next round and come up with this update. Because it's important that we kind of start moving this forward, because every day that goes by, it's 68.50.
I'd like to see a penny and a half also model.
Okay. Penny and a half brings us to $15 per.
15, 30. I mean, but I want to see it next to the other model better than what I
With
have.
or without a capital improvement.
That would be like 3 to 5 years of the 140 rip off.
I just have a question.
The highest rate that we've seen in the Houston area right now is
Gallon?
$10 bucks now.
Oh, per thousand.
That's a penny a day. So the average rate out there right now is about 15. I mean, and I was thinking, trying to get the scenario to the gas scenario with Mr. Ross product. Keep in mind, the gas business is for profit. They sell gas, they make. They make billions, billions.
It fluctuates.
We are in a
Whatever.
I thought that we need to run a profit, we need to put reserves, because we're gonna spend that much on replacing water. But the reason the base rate has been there since eons in the utility business is that you brought up. Caesar brought up that if you got a water tap at your house, we're charging you $10 to $15 a month, whether you use any water or not. Yeah, I mean, you have to meter, and if you're at a service line in your house, you got a water line there, and you got service in your house, it's gonna cost you $15 a month. And no, that's not including any water. And that really, that's the ability to have. Need your house, have your $50. If you want gas, drive to the gas station and get it. Talk to the gas company and see if they'll deliver gas to your house. Find out what that's gonna cost you to get gasoline, tap at your house. Tell them that's what you want. I'm gonna gas and tap at my house. With your own personal pump. Right, you don't get that. In the utility business,
on how big.
we deliver water to your house. And we take the wastewater from your house. All you gotta do is put a little silver handle on it. Right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yep.
What you do with it, I don't care. I don't wanna hear anymore. No, right? So there's a big difference between those market industries. And that's why those base rates are there for that meter fee, that service fee, as we call it, which I understand Mr. Ross's point that, yeah, if you're only using 1,000 gallons of water, you're paying $20 per base fee. Hey, that's about $20 a gallon. What it is. The conservation rate is in such a way that if you're paying $5 per thousand at a 5,000 gallon increase, if you're using 10,000 by industry standards, you should be paying $7.50 per thousand, not $5. That makes your rate high.
My big concern though is that at 1,000 gallons, I should not be paying half as much as per gallon for 10,000 gallons. That's how the numbers break down.
Well, that's why I said, we may need to take
Per
the
gallon.
numbers up higher in those higher rates. That may not be charging enough for the higher. So what's a good, so in your case, are you saying eliminate the tiers and you go by a certain amount? So 0 to 2, you're gonna charge this much for 1,000 gallons. 2 to 5, this much, 5 to 10. So you're saying eliminate so many tiers. Right. It goes 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, and 10 above. And have a base rate of, I don't know, $7.50. Good.
Per gallon.
We could work on it. We could put something like that together.
That,
Huh?
Your base is already at $8.
right.
It's $8 for 1,000, but what Mr. Ron
But
is saying.
what, that's, you know, that way, if you break it down. I mean, with right now rates. Oh, that's all the proposed stuff for next, with the Band-Aid coming off. I pay that 8.008. But at 1,000 gallons, they're paying 0.0044. Per gallon.
But I think, as Rick mentioned, there's a cost of service just to deliver the water, like no matter what it was. And then you add the water on top of that.
Well, historically, you haven't been charged for this because it's a 2. It's been like, you're gonna pay the ability and we're gonna kick in $1,000. I mean, kicking 1,000 gallons. We're like, here you go for free.
All right, charge them $5 than a penny a gallon.
Again, it's fine.
That would put my 1,000 gallons at $20. And the 10,000 gallon at 120.
An incremental increase, block increase for conservation, because we have to have that in there. If not, we're not gonna qualify for the.
Yeah, and we want forgiveness. Okay, we want loans and forgiveness. And we're different from grant.
Where can I find
for grant?
definition for this conservation, because it doesn't,
Under the Texas Water Development Board.
that's,
There's a bunch of resources in your folder of different sources of different projects that you can look at. So the bottom line, what we're doing is to have different ideas. You know, this bottom line.
Yeah, so we're looking at writing some grants or going for some grants.
We are, and that's the thing about, it. We've been really aggressive with grants, and we'll continue to be very aggressive with grants. But
I know that can be frustrating.
it's very frustrating because you can apply to 10 and not get in.
We've done a lot of grants. You don't get a lot.
Right, you can apply 10 and get 1 or 2.
Right.
Right, and but you have to be in it to win. What my intention or goal of this whole thing was is to go out and get any one of whatever, CO, SRF, they're all the funds that we're talking about. You know, rich
neighbor from the line wants to give us $50 million, whatever. We take those dollars and we take those dollars here. We're gonna try to first take these dollars and apply for grants. To use these as matches to try to get more bang for our buck. But if we don't get them, guess what? We've already got earmarked to do 1 through 6. In an ideal world, we apply, we get these SRS, we get 1 through 6. We sit there and we apply for grants and we get another half of it paid for. We're gonna ask for 1 through 6, we might be able to get 1 through 9. Right, we might, we don't know, with that same pot of dollars. So we're able to do more with less and we can accelerate how quickly we do. Based on how good we do with what we're getting. Now, we understand we gotta earn the public trust back, we understand. We are paying for sick with people that were here way before us, and we understand, it. That's fine. But it doesn't take away from the problem. Problem is $6,850 per day, starting next Monday or next. Saturday, when's the first? Saturday. Next Saturday. This Saturday. We start losing that now. So we can do is JP, I think you heard our marching order, add another model here that shows the different days. Just for what we're gonna do for no water, just a base fee. What does that dollar amount look like? And then incorporate some of these fees for 0 to 1 or 0 to 1, 0 to 2, what have you. And then I think I understood that. 2 to 5. I think that's right here. Now everybody kind of wants to see. We lost connection.
One thing I would encourage you to, I guess, consider to think about is the capital improvement fund idea has been new in the industry. Some entities are using that as a way of showing the public those expenses of replacement capital infrastructure, rather than building it into the rate. If the plan is not to use the capital improvement fund, that $2, $4 fund, so and to build it back at the rate, we would have to change the rate that we're looking at. Do not include that payback on capital. Now, on these projects that we're talking about, the plan is to submit these plans to the Water Development Board for funding. There's no cost to do that. Fill out forms, submit it. New numbers I've heard is the feds are actually pushing 50% forgiveness on the infrastructure loan money coming down. Now, keep in mind this big dollars you're hearing out of the infrastructure fund that's being distributed in all the states over 5 years. Right. But once Texas gets that money, Water Development Board, a big chunk of that money is going to go to Western Texas. They have big problems out there. And a lot of that money goes to water treatment plants, which we don't operate. There's a lot of water treatment plant problems out there. So a lot of that funding already earmarked.
Did you tell us that in the last meeting?
So
So I don't care if the money is forgivable, I don't care how we get the money, I just wanna make sure we're making the money cover the money. That's
true.
that's the only, all I care about is nickel to nickel. Making.
And if Marque is fortunate enough to get some or all of that funding forgiven, they call it forgiven, then any money we raise through this capital improvement fund would be building up our own capital reserve fund to be able to do other water. Keep in mind, it's only 15 miles of the 2-inch water. We've got 2 other projects right now that we're working on replacing big pipe on Main Street, big pipe on Lake, and those are multi-million-dollar projects. We get into the big pipe, it gets expensive really fast.
And those are going to keep happening.
They never quit. Yeah, like I said, we got 90 miles, 900 miles of pipe, got 20 miles pretty new, the rest of it is leaking. So if we sit down and say we got 70 miles of pipeline in place, this math after a while, you got to keep replacing pipe.
So did I hear you correctly that figures include that fund?
We showed the capital improvement fund money separately. That was at $2, $4, $6. That was the way of funding the capital improvements. If the focus group doesn't like that, and the idea is that we'd rather fund capital improvements through rates, then we need to alter the rates, because the rates you're looking at
Just not.
Mr. Garcia said, that it doesn't have, there's no money in there to fund that payment. So those rates are going a little bit higher and a little bit deep. Right now, we've got the 40-35, but if you're gonna need to fund payback, you're gonna have to have another 25% increase on year 3 and another 25% increase on year 4 probably. Once we borrow the money, we don't have to start paying it back for a year. So if we borrow money in 2023, the bill doesn't start coming due until 2024.
I have a question.
That's what you, excuse me, like a year ahead.
Yes, well, yeah, I mean, if we start putting money in the bank, literally putting the money in the bank, we don't spend it on knickknacks and put it in a capital reserve fund.
And the perfect example, sorry,
No, go ahead.
the perfect example of that has been, although the community made it reluctant to move it originally with the parks scenario, and that's one of the good on the fund. Understand that model is kind of started working, right? We've had a seed money to go apply. Right? That seed money has allowed us to start with the Mayhem part of the project for the boat ramp. It's allowed us to apply for other park grants. When we hear from, at least we've got that there saying, well, oh, we need this much of the map. Well, wait a minute, we've got that much of the map. Let's go be aggressive. It's allowed us to build that kind of going. I know, JP, I think you have to get going. Does anybody have any questions for JP?
I did. So they're the expert, right?
They're the
And
ones
they
that
dealt-
clear the model.
They've dealt with other cities that have gone through
Yes.
things like that. So JP, is there a model that the city's not looking at right now that you would suggest?
I think that the city has been exploring other options, like Rick was explaining earlier, where you could bill by meter size. The difficulty right now is there's two categories of options. There's things that we can work out the math quite quickly. Those are the kinds of models we showed you tonight, where the math is quite easy to work out, and we can, with confidence, work out what the revenues would turn out to be if those rates were adjusted as we showed. For some of the other a little bit more sophisticated adjustments to rates, we'd have to do some math that we can't really do right now until we get some billing data. So it's just a question of getting the right data out of the billing software into Waterworth, and then we can essentially kind of make out any kind of rate model that you'd like to see. And a good place to start is, as Rick mentioned earlier, is to start billing the base rate, to scale it by meter size. So that's a widely adopted industry standard. And we can work from there. So I think the shorter answer to your question is the city's looking pretty hard at this. They're looking at us, and we just can't do the math yet because we don't have the data, and we're trying hard to get that data.
And Caesar,
Part of-
is there a, and there probably is, this is my first meeting. So is the city looking at a new billing software?
Yes.
Okay,
What we have is technically obsolete,
thank God.
and we really need to jump ship as soon as possible. It has become, and our IT director,
Kind of archaic.
it is very archaic.
And as a user, having an issue right now and having Susan look at it, they don't have, it's like, I don't have the information to even give them, because my invoice that you get after you pay doesn't give you the information it needs to give.
Right, and those are some of the things that we're looking at to be more efficient. We've added the consumer portal that we hope to launch this next fiscal year that allows you to look at your bill and say, well, how much am I? Do I have to wait for that? If you have a leak and you're on vacation, you'll be able to tell that, hey, wait, my consumption's kind of high all of a sudden, and I'm not even know why. You might go, hey, go check on my house. There's a lot of different things you can set up within the system that we're trying to launch, but all this takes time and effort. And the problem right now is we're trying to fix an 60-80 year problem in 60 or 80 days. And I'm being completely open about that. That's the biggest challenge. We've got years and years of data to sift through and try to get to an archaic software to try to get this done on top of our regular day-to-day duties and all the other, things that are going on, kind of while pushing this through. And that's a challenge. It's tough.
Yeah.
Time is our biggest annually.
Right.
With this project, because every day that goes by, the river gets resolved, it's costing us time. We've already planned for 90 days, and you saw what that looked like, $616,000. That's with us, and you should probably, you were there. We said, it's too much too soon to hit our residents all at one time. We need to properly vet this, and look at the different examples we come up because of the time that we looked at. It's gotten, we're not at 140% mark. We come up with different things that maybe are not as bad, right? Or I would say that, they're not all abrupt, if you will. So, we're looking at different models, different ways, but we need to kind of get consensus, because when we do put this out in the public, everyone's not gonna be happy to understand that, but we want to make sure everybody understands. It needs to be understood, and properly received, so it makes sense to people.
Well, people aren't happy now. I mean, you go on any of those.
I mean, how three of them protocols and they're.
I mean, we're talking about pressure.
I'm sorry.
That's why I stay off.
I'm like, oh, Jesus.
So I mean, I think the main thing to consider is, like I said, the capital improvement payment plan, either the CIP, you know, the monthly fee, or could be built into the rates. And then probably the other scenario is the rip the Band-Aid off technique versus an incremental rate increase. Most people would, I mean, I've done 21% increases and you spread 7% for 3 years. You do 15%, 5%. You get to where you need to go. Our problem, and that came up late in the discussion, is our reserves are really bad. So we don't have the ability to start off rate increases when we're losing at 68 bucks a day.
So what is our timeline moving forward after this meeting? What's next?
So what we would really like to do is, we would like to update council maybe as early as October 10th. If we can, I don't know if what feedback we have. We probably should sit down and have another meeting to fine tune what we present to make sure everybody has a voice. There's a couple of folks that have provided some feedback that are not here tonight. We're going to see if there's any possibility we can possibly incorporate what they're saying, even though it is not here, but they're very unaggressive approaches that don't get it where we need to be. It compounds the problem, right? And even the 2-year option you saw, that we're already in trouble. Greater trouble than we are.
Well, that's kind of how it's been handled in the past, so.
Very, very, very.
So it hasn't worked, so we need to find something else.
Ms. Blunt, I cannot agree with you more. The problem is where do we go from here? So to answer your question, the timeline is steps. We want, I mean, ideally, with new water rates of tomorrow, I think it needs to happen. We have to see the why. We're losing 60 other bucks a day. And we weren't able to institute this effective October 1 because there's a lot of other stuff going on. Budget was a challenge, 46 cents, everything was happening. That was a challenge. So we're trying to take one challenge on at a time. Realistically, if we can make this happen by January 1, I think it would be, I wouldn't say win, but it wouldn't be as bad. The loss would only be 616,000. If that sounds, if you can hear what I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I tell you, where my teeth are saying it. But every day that goes by, in my
That's not what
I would
means,
tell
sir.
you, I would tell you my ideal vote, I would say this separate. But in order for that to happen, we need 2 meetings. We would need, and we're coming over here, so we need a meeting in October, meeting in November. Or if for some crazy reason we had a special meeting between, which is unlikely, we just.
We're not meeting.
We do, but if we were gonna go December 1st with the new rates taking effect. If we were gonna take effect January 1st, then that's a scenario you could do. Because remember, if we cut a month, we've got 200,000.
And there was some movement with some council members about whether we have the 40% or, you know, there was, I think there's some consensus about the 80. So the year 1 plan we've got right now is 90. You can run these numbers all across the board. Right? We haven't been sleeping in weeks.
Yeah, it's been,
I mean, you can run these numbers backwards and forward. The bottom line is, we need to increase it. We need more revenue into the fund.
if we're showing you 2 models, it's because we've probably done. 20. If we're showing you 3 or 4, it's because we've done 30. Like this has gone a very, very long. Even a few times when you said when we were making pro tem that you said it with us, even when we said with him, we've already vetted several different options, because we don't want to waste our time. We're trying to see like, well, how are folks gonna think about this? How do they feel about this? How does this make this group feel? What about this? We're trying to take that and make the same time, because time is precious.
And we could get around the $15 model. Kind of like. And we made the case out of it at $15 a month for 2,000 gallons. If you use the 2,000 gallons, then there's 50 cents a day, right? You gotta be able to sell it to the public. You gotta be able to sell it to the person out there on fixed income that right now, maybe they're paying $8.53. And we're talking about literally doubling their rate to $15. We throw in an extra 1,000
Well,
gallons.
they'll get that dollar on it.
Pardon me?
They'll get.
They get $1 off.
There you go.
Yeah, the other thing is, I want everybody to be aware, and I'm not this, I look, the statistic side. Look at our city demographics. Statistics. We have our population in 23 census, approximately 19,000 people. Of 19,000 people, only 7,000 have a job, according to the census. 32% of our population are what we consider seniors or disabled.
That's fine.
Fixed income. We have the lowest per annual income of almost any city in the county, approximately $50,000. So certainly I don't want to think that it's regressive. It's going to cost people with fixed incomes lower, higher than someone who's at their pool.
And it's tough, because Mark's infrastructure is pretty expansive.
I know Mark's talking, I'm happy here. Quick question though. On our west side of our new development, can't we immediately go ahead, because we're already putting in the 2-inch and the larger pipes or pipes. Can't we immediately go ahead and come up with a fee structure for that already and pass an ordinance with regard to those things so that there are.
All their lines are up to. Their
I know that, but for future development, where the development is occurring, so we already come up with a fee for the larger.
There's impact. We are looking at how we offset some of the costs of the side.
We
Talking about starting with people in Delaney Cove more money than people on the east side. Well, I'm talking about a newer development. Anything that's new. He's talking about investments.
Yeah, we've had that discussion that's what we'll be looking at in the next, in the coming years. And not coming months, not coming years.
It is, we're trying to pass one hurdle before we take the next one.
One of the projects we're looking at. Identify using these studies to improve pressure and flow in the city, because the lines represent large transmission lines that help the overall system perform better. So because on the impact fee by law, you can't use that to go over on the east side and replace water lines. Like we're talking about with the model and B, you just cannot use those impacts, which is in a separate fund. Which we have a couple $1 million, right? 2.5, something like that.
And that's some of the projects that again, for equity and bond users, if we start dipping, we start doing some of the projects, and went back for those back to the other side. Oh, you're just working, no, it's not about that, it's a problem that things. And that still doesn't complete the issue, which is you're charging less than what it's costing us for other part. We need to replace stormwater water tanks. That could get paid for with impact.
About that, actually about that. Is it still legal?
No, we fix it.
And something else that Greg mentioned, the discussion, right? So we talked about water pressure, everybody knows big old, new water tank that we were talking about, 45 in Texas City, close to the microphone. That was called.
That's the
Well-
one that Chase, one you left.
Well, it's not ours, it's not.
It's not ours.
Okay, I'm in Texas City,
Oh,
but this is the much bigger one. We built a much larger one. Well, Rick educated me the other day that There's a reason why some water towers are rated up, the bigger the water tower. Or would you tell me?
The taller they are, you get more pressure. The maximum pressure we can run in the Marque is about 55 PSI, which in my experience is a little lower than that. Like, the water coming in from Gulf Coast, we can't run that kind of pressure because the 50 PSI are overflowing our tank.
And all along you.
So why is the pressure, why is the pressure in the Marque 4? Because we don't have the right size water. If we build a new one, we'll
We don't have a right side pipe that are busted.
Well,
Right. there's a
and
whole-
even if we did, we couldn't use it for at its full extent, because that's all.
Or think that
And look at the pipe and just the inside, the amount of room and force and everything you lose because of the pressure, the arteries in your.
You're right.
Low blood pressure, right?
And this is, so I need, this is the problem, this is where you asked for what the timeline is, I think that's the time. You did, but now I'm gonna have that. This does nothing if you don't go out and educate your children. Right? This does nothing if we don't do something with this. Right? And what I'd like to do next is take what we've done here, record it and share it on our 16 or our YouTube or what have you. Engage some of your questions. Hopefully, that'll trigger more questions that we can hopefully address, because we've gotta knock out the misconception. Right, we have to, some of them are valid, some of them are not, I understand, but I wanna make sure everybody is comfortable with everybody. As many people as possible are comfortable with this, that people might not agree with, understand the why. Folks must understand the why. That's important, that is imperative over here. We've got to do. it. Okay, and that's the basis of what we're doing. If we gotta do 10 of these, we'll do 10 of them. Okay? Might not always have to be like this. I'm just being honest. If this is what we need to do, then this is what it's gonna take, then it's okay, we'll do it. We can have them at different times of day, we can do the same presentation over and over and over again. What we don't want is misconceptions of, oh, I didn't know, or that's not true, or what about this, or you've got a pot of gold and you're hiding under City Hall. No, there isn't. This is not what this is about. This is about, this is what it is, and this is what it's not. Okay, and so if there's any question that you guys hear, that you have a question on, all of you have my contact info, please contact me, allow us to educate folks a little bit better, because we have not done historically, the Marque has not done the best of jobs to educate. We own it, which is why we're doing it. We're trying a different way. And if this doesn't work, I'm open to suggestions. Okay, what's gonna help to get the word out? We gotta go corner by corner, every single HOA meeting, whatever we gotta do, that's what we're here to do. But it's gotta be, one, hopefully we listen, right? Hopefully we show up, hopefully we get the word out, we're being factual, and we wanna answer people's questions. What happens is we'll say something, and then we'll get, after the fact, nobody says anything to us, but then they get out there in their worlds of social media, what have you. I'll be the first to tell you, I've applied something, haven't gotten let in. I don't have time to do. None of us have the time all day in and day out to do it. It would be a full-time position. It will be a full-time position just to watch every other person's social media to try to put it and
still crazy.
so let's be honest, this is the forum in which people can come and voice. And for those that do that, we appreciate it. We appreciate you for your time and your effort and energy. On this presentation that we're sharing tonight, we're gonna fine tune it, and we'd like to share it with you, at least the slides that are kind of burning that are easy to explain. And again, we're not even talking about capital improvement, guys. That is a pipe dream, if you will. None of it's gonna matter right now. Because what's gonna end up happening is very simple. What is our alternative? If that, this is a real question, I've never asked either one. What if we don't shift this up soon, what happens to our water?
You don't have none.
We're gonna be on the news, we're gonna be on the news like some of these other places.
We're on a-
Like,
We're gonna get additional funding.
you'll take it, you've been taken over, and we'll get added to somebody else.
No, we haven't gonna be fighting over.
I'm just telling you,
Yeah,
I'm just telling you.
we are.
I'm just telling you,
Somebody gonna get a whooping if we go.
and this is what's going on. We're gonna be in the ones like the Detroit, or what have you, and then the solution's gonna be. I'm hitting a really sore subject right now. So what happened with the school system? It's gonna be the same way with the water.
Yes.
The water couldn't handle the water, we had to come and get it. I hope we learned from that,
We're not doing
okay?
We're not.
And guess what they'll do? They're gonna charge whatever they need to charge. Someone's gonna take it.
Sometimes you gotta do the hurts. So you get past it.
I'm bringing the
I totally-
big bridges at the next meeting.
So if I can inject one thing, I want to thank Joe for coming. And I'll say this, yeah, but one of the best things that I've always worked on with race is you've got to get the politics out. Because the people that sit up there, they want to get reelected. And they want to, they want to make good decisions for the city. So race is just not something that's well with the politicians. Governing body, that's just happens in most cities. And so getting into, Mr. Garcia and I talked about a utility advisory committee and things like that, that helps the council understand that rates have got to happen. And ultimately, what you want to try to do is get a rate structure that's in for 5 and 10 years, so people understand rates are going up, period. So,
Boy,
I mean,
like any-
it's going up. And what you want to see is go up a little bit every year rather than stay 40%. You don't want to.
And somebody said we're gonna go up 3% per year, every year, 15 years ago, we wouldn't be here.
Well, and there's not one person in here, I would gather, that would say, oh, I like paying more. None of us wants to pay more, but I bet you none of us wants to be on the TV that we have to go get bottled water, and then we can't find bottled water because, everybody needs bottled water because we can't use the water out of our faucet, can't even bathe in it. So there's nobody that wants to go through what this is if you're anybody else is that good.
I totally agree with that.
We all want water.
Getting it on the road.
It's been the politics in the past. That's my own opinion.
I agree with your opinion.
I don't want to make people upset with me up here, that I want your vote, so we're just gonna go on like it's been going, and it just.
Kicking the can down the road.
It's coming down like a ton of bricks. You gotta do something.
And I think every single person on that council, including the mayor, needs to speak exactly how they feel, take the politics out of it, and tell it exactly how it is. Instead of saying, I.
say that?
Instead of saying, I was saying, or.
Well, and I want to thank you, we're gonna shut this off, we're done for the night now. I have to share everybody's time. It's a